Every year, over 3,000 tons of cocaine enter Europe. More than 70% arrives through the Benelux countries. From there, it is moved deeper into the continent, increasingly by train. One route has even earned a name among custom officials: the Narco train. I spent the night on board.
So guys, do you ever find yourself lost in Jamaica's worst ghetto and you need to call an Uber or simply just...
Our journey starts in Amsterdam. In this video, I'm not just riding a train, I'm following a known trafficking route from the inside. I watched the night unfold not just as a passenger, but as a witness to what moves unseen through Europe. But why Amsterdam? Why this stunning Hanseatic city with its many canals and centuries-old architecture? The capital of the Netherlands, also dubbed the Venice of the North, attracts tourists from all over the world and offers them unforgettable experiences. With the legalization and decriminalization of mind-altering substances like cannabis and certain psychedelics, Amsterdam has become an El Dorado for psychonauts, hippies, and adventurers like myself. But behind the cheerful facades of smart shops, tourist crowds, and souvenir stalls, another reality unfolds. Obviously, I'm not talking about truffles or cannabis. The real problem hides in a fine white powder called cocaine, a problem that has fueled a sharp rise in organized crime across the region in recent years. Politicians are being intimidated, journalists have been targeted, and armed disputes between rival groups have taken place in broad daylight. While the situation is still far from what we see in other parts of the world, some are now asking whether the Netherlands and Belgium are on their way to becoming Europe's first narco states. The Narco train departs from Amsterdam's Centraal Station. Thanks to the Schengen Agreement, it's possible to travel across most of the European continent without passing through a single border control. While widely celebrated as a milestone for a united Europe, this freedom of movement benefits not only tourists, employees and students, but also criminal underground networks. There's no need to check luggage, IDs or even tickets the way you would at an airport. If I were a trafficker, this would feel almost laughably easy. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm always asked, how can you afford to travel the world all the time? Well, I'm a trafficker. YouTube is just a front. No, obviously I'm joking. Or am I? And just like that, we are on the Narco train. Or Nightjet, as it's officially called. The carriages are owned by the Swiss Federal Railways, but I booked my ticket online through Deutsche Bahn, Germany's national railway company. For my first class seat, I just paid €32, which strangely was the exact same price as a second class ticket. I don't think I need to explain how ridiculously cheap €32 is for this overnight ride, but just for comparison, a return ticket from my hometown to Zurich on a commuter train, also operated by the Swiss Railways, takes just 19 minutes and costs almost €50 for first class. Meanwhile, this trip to Zurich covers nearly 1,000 kilometers or around 600 miles and takes all night, arriving the next morning. But I'm not complaining and I'm sure los narcotraficantes aren't either.
Dames en heren, een hele goede avond. Keulen is de verwachte aankomsttijd 23:38. En vanuit Keulen gaat deze trein.
Glancing around this neat and cozy compartment, it's not exactly what I expect from a so-called narco train. The atmosphere is anything but intimidating, and to my surprise, this train seems to be used not just by traffickers, but by your boring everyday passengers as well. So all in all, you don't really see any signs of the secret smuggling going on, which probably is the whole point. Even if this train doesn't look like a smuggling convoy at first, or even second glance, it's highly likely that most trains on this route are carrying illegal substances. Still, it's nearly impossible to know how much is really being transported. Apart from occasional spot checks, there's no large-scale monitoring in place. Therefore, Swiss, German and Dutch authorities assume that they only discover a small fraction of all contraband being smuggled. Even when the German or Swiss custom officers do see several kilos, these finds are little more than a drop in the ocean when it comes to fighting organized crime. And whenever large-scale seizures do happen, like during a coordinated pan-European raid a few years ago, the reduced supply might drive up prices temporarily, making the business even more profitable and more violent for the groups involved. Still, I have to be honest, I'm almost a bit disappointed that nothing truly content-worthy is happening at the moment, so instead of waiting for the drama, I decide to chase it on a little nighttime stroll through the smuggler's train. I make sure not to leave anything in my seat, which I generally advise anyone traveling by train to do. This is particularly relevant in Germany, where there is currently a surge in gangs who specialize in robbing night trains. They seem to have found a particularly lucrative gap in the market, as the valuables of sleeping passengers and the substances that are often deposited separately on the train are a real find. On my little adventure through the train, however, I don't notice anything unusual, so I just wander around the various compartments until at some point the train attendant catches me and sends me back to my seat, where I spend my time editing videos and trying to get some work done. Getting work done, however, is not that easy, as there is still no Wi-Fi on Swiss trains as of 2025. When my roaming data runs out, I start wondering, if even the rundown German railways have internet, how have the Swiss not figured it out yet? Well, the explanation is that in Switzerland we tend to be quite cautious about anything new and unfamiliar, like for example the internet. As my teacher at secondary school used to say, we don't need to bother with things like the internet and computers, as they are a flash in the pan with no future that will disappear as suddenly as it appeared. Well, the teacher said a lot of things throughout the day, because he also said that I never make anything out of myself, and look where I am now. The next stop is Frankfurt, a major economic center and a well-known hub for organized crime. The city plays a crucial role in the vast network behind the trafficking of that fine white powder I've been following on this train. But how exactly does this business work, and why does the train I'm on factor so heavily into the operation? This is precisely the question I've been investigating. Generally speaking, this is how it works. Since the coca plant only grows in the mountains of South America, the narcotics must first be transported to Europe. Traditionally, smuggling routes run mainly through Mediterranean regions such as Spain, southern France and Italy. Over time, however, drug cartels have deeply rooted themselves in the Benelux countries and now exploit the region's lax controls to maintain and expand their empires. Once the merchandise arrives at the ports in the Netherlands or Belgium, cartels use corrupt dock workers to facilitate unloading. From there, their network of trusted operatives coordinates the shipments for distribution across Europe. Within this internal European network, rail transport is playing an increasingly important role, as it faces significantly fewer controls compared to trucks, planes or cars. Smugglers carry the goods with them and stash them somewhere on a train. Often there are no cameras, no inspections and no clear evidence linking the packages to their owners. This makes the journey to Germany or Switzerland quite low risk. These smugglers are paid well, but they are usually small players at the bottom of the hierarchy, or they don't belong to the gangs at all. Most transport only a few kilos, but there are many of them. This strategy overwhelms custom authorities and spreads the risk. If one smuggler is caught, it barely affects the wider operation. Our train plays a key role mainly because of its route. From the heart of Amsterdam, through Germany and all the way to Switzerland, a strong but seemingly inconspicuous consumer market. With 5 of the top 10 European cities for cocaine consumption located in Switzerland, the country has one of the highest per capita usage rates on the continent. Consumption has risen steadily in recent years, and if you've ever spent time in Switzerland, you'll know how widespread and normalized cocaine use has become. In Switzerland, high incomes make cocaine relatively cheap, often cheaper than a few drinks in a club. The high demand fuels a flood of cocaine that the authorities simply can't keep up with. Whether anyone admits it or not, the war on drug was lost long ago. Still, it's frightening how cocaine has become normalized across all social classes today. Of course, drinking every weekend isn't healthy either, but that doesn't mean we should let another highly addictive substance spread through society like cancer. I don't want to kill the vibe for anyone, and I believe in live and let live, but I'm biased on this topic as I've seen what cocaine does to good people and how it wears them down quietly but relentlessly. Some who were once my closest friends have reached a point that really breaks my heart, and that's why this video feels personal to me. Now, I'm not here to preach, and yes, I know it might seem like a double standard to speak out against cocaine while being more open-minded towards weed or psychedelics. But after spending a night on the Narco train, I started to reflect on how we deal with drugs in general and what that says about us. So for me, what's really a double standard is when people who do cocaine every evening call you a hippie for talking about psychedelics. As the famous bro scientist Joe Rogan once pointed out, Lumping all substances together under the same label doesn't reflect reality. Scientific research has long shown how misguided many of the drug laws from the 1970s were. Still, in many countries, they're all treated the same. And at this point, I want to make it clear that I'm not promoting anything illegal. This channel respects the law, and I assume you do too. I'm also not here to glorify anything or suggest that any substance is without risk, but I do believe the progress we're seeing deserves attention. Switzerland in particular has become one of the pioneers in modern psychedelic research. Legal psychedelic-assisted therapy is gaining momentum here, and the results of the research show that substances like psilocybin or ketamine, when used in controlled clinical settings, can help treat PTSD, depression, and even addiction to substances like cocaine. Anyway, we've probably gone way deeper into this whole topic than this video ever needed. Also, I'm not a doctor or an expert, though I did study biomedicine once until I decided to drop out and become a full-time disappointment to my family, but that's a story for another video. But at some point in the early morning, after the lights have been on full blast all night, we cross the Swiss border. The train ends here, even though it was supposed to continue to Zurich, but in Germany we got a delay of like 45 minutes, which isn't unusual there. But Switzerland doesn't play that game. To keep their schedule intact, they simply don't let delayed trains cross over anymore. So even drug smokers aren't spared from Deutsche Bahn delays, I guess. In Basel, customs officer board a train. They approach a seemingly inconspicuous guy sitting next to me. The dog starts barking, and then they check his bags and find some stuff. Anyway, now that we have looked at drug trafficking and the society behind it through the lens of this train ride, the question is, what can we do about it? And honestly, I have no idea. I'm just a guy on the internet. How should I know? If you would also like to become a guy on the internet, check out this video. Thank you so much for watching this slightly different kind of a video. Maybe you liked it, maybe I will lose a few subscribers. Let me know what you think and we will see.